Hollywood loves to sell perfection. But behind the cameras, some of its biggest stars became absolute nightmares. Explosive fights, brutal insults, bizarre demands, leaked meltdowns, and directors who swore they would never work with them again. These weren't rumors whispered at parties. They became legendary disasters. So what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling? Number 1. Charlie Sheen. In 2010, Charlie Sheen was sitting on a television throne few actors had ever touched. 2.5 Men was a ratings monster, and Sheen was reportedly earning around $1.8 million per episode, making him television's highest-paid actor. Then the king decided to set fire to his own castle. Behind the laughs, his personal life was spiraling, production was repeatedly disrupted, and his relationship with creator Chuck Lorre exploded into open warfare. Hollywood had seen difficult stars before. It had rarely watched one unravel this publicly. By February 2011, the sitcom had stopped filming, but Charlie Sheen had only started performing. He launched into a surreal media marathon, appearing on television and radio, while delivering phrases that instantly became internet mythology. Tiger blood. Winning. By winning. The interviews were outrageous, funny, uncomfortable, and strangely impossible to look away from. Millions watched a man who had once commanded America's biggest sitcom turn his own breakdown into a live spectacle, almost as if Hollywood had accidentally produced a reality show it could no longer control. Then came March 7, 2011. Warner Brothers Television officially terminated Sheen from 2.5 Men, effective immediately. Ashton Kutcher would eventually take his place while Sheen walked away from one of the most lucrative jobs on television. Years later, the madness looks less like a victory lap and more like a spectacular collision between fame, ego addiction, and self-destruction. Charlie Sheen kept shouting that he was winning, but in the cruelest Hollywood punchline imaginable, he was doing it while watching his biggest career triumph disappear. Number 2. Christian Bale. Christian Bale had already proved he could transform himself into almost anyone, but on the set of Terminator Salvation, the intensity suddenly became terrifyingly real. During filming in 2008, director of photography Shane Hurlbut stepped into Bale's eyeline while an emotionally charged scene was being shot. Bale exploded. What followed was nearly 4 minutes of furious shouting, profanity, and threats to walk away if the disruption happened again. The cameras may not have captured the moment, but somebody recorded the audio, and that recording was about to become more famous than anyone expected. When the tape leaked online in February 2009, Hollywood had its perfect scandal. Bale's voice thundered across radio shows, television reports, parody videos, and remixes, until millions of people had heard Batman completely lose his cool. Suddenly, the actor celebrated for discipline and total commitment looked like the nightmare coworker. Nobody wanted standing beside them on a bad day. The irony was brutal. Bale was playing John Connor, humanity's desperate leader against the machines. Yet for 4 unforgettable minutes, the biggest threat on set seemed to be John Connor himself. But Bale did something many stars avoid after a spectacular meltdown. He owned it. Calling into Los Angeles radio station KROQ, he admitted he had gone far beyond what was acceptable, said he had acted like a punk and refused to make excuses. He also explained that he and Hurlbut had settled their disagreement that same day and continued working together. The scandal did not destroy Bale's career, but it left behind one of Hollywood's most legendary leaked outbursts, A reminder that sometimes the most explosive performance happens after someone forgets the cameras are supposed to be rolling. Number 3. Megan Fox. In 2007, Megan Fox exploded into global fame with Transformers, becoming one of Hollywood's most photographed young stars almost overnight. But behind the glossy premieres and blockbuster explosions, her relationship with director Michael Bay was becoming increasingly volatile. Then came the interview that changed everything. In 2009, Fox criticized Bay's directing style, comparing him to Napoleon, and even saying he wanted to be like Hitler on his sets. The words detonated across Hollywood, turning an already tense working relationship into a full-scale public controversy. The backlash arrived fast. Crew members who had worked on Transformers published an angry open letter defending Bay and attacking Fox's attitude, while rumors spread that the actress had become too difficult for the franchise that made her famous. By the time Transformers: Dark of the Moon moved forward, Fox was gone, replaced by Rosie Huntington-Whiteley. Bay later said executive producer Steven Spielberg had told him to fire her after hearing about the Hitler comparison, although Fox's representatives maintained that she had chosen not to return. Either way, one of Hollywood's hottest rising stars had suddenly vanished from one of the biggest movie franchises on Earth. And then came the twist nobody expected. Years later, Bay and Fox somehow repaired their professional relationship, with Fox starring in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films that Bay produced. The feud that once looked career-ending had not lasted forever, but the damage to Fox's image was already burned into Hollywood history. One interview, one explosive comparison, and suddenly, the woman standing beside giant robots was fighting a much more dangerous machine, the Hollywood reputation factory. Number 4. Marlon Brando. By the time Marlon Brando arrived in the Philippines to film Apocalypse Now, he was already considered one of the greatest actors alive. But Francis Ford Coppola quickly discovered that directing a legend could feel more like surviving a natural disaster. According to Coppola's later accounts, Brando arrived significantly overweight and had not read Heart of Darkness, the novel that inspired his character, Colonel Kurtz. He also resisted being clearly photographed, forcing Coppola and cinematographer Vittorio Storaro to hide much of his body in darkness and shadow. Somehow, a problem became one of the film's most unforgettable visual choices. Then the real chaos began. Brando frequently improvised rather than following the script, leaving Coppola scrambling to reshape scenes around whatever the actor decided to do that day. At times, the director stayed up through the night, rewriting material before cameras rolled again. And Brando was only one disaster in a production already being crushed by a hurricane destroyed. Sets Martin Sheen's near-fatal heart attack, a ballooning budget, and a shoot that dragged on for more than a year. Apocalypse Now was supposed to depict madness in Vietnam. Behind the camera, it was beginning to manufacture its own. Years later, the documentary Hearts of Darkness exposed just how close Coppola came to breaking under the pressure. Yet here is the cruel Hollywood joke: after all the frustration, delays, and sleepless nights, Brando's shadow-soaked performance as Colonel Kurtz became legendary. The actor who helped drive the production toward the edge also delivered one of its most haunting achievements. Was the chaos worth it? Hollywood is still arguing about that question decades later, because sometimes genius does not walk calmly onto a movie set. Sometimes it arrives late, changes everything, and leaves everyone else trying to survive. Team Brando or Team Coppola, pick a side in the comments, and let's see who wins this Hollywood battle. Number 5. Russell Crowe. By 2005, Russell Crowe was already Hollywood royalty. Gladiator had made him an international superstar, his Oscar confirmed the talent, and his intense screen presence made him look almost untouchable. Then one frustrating night in New York turned that same intensity into a scandal. While staying at the Mercer Hotel, Crowe struggled to call his wife in Australia. According to the original account, his frustration boiled over into a confrontation with concierge Nestor Estrada, and Crowe threw a telephone that struck Estrada in the face, leaving an injury that required treatment. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Crowe was arrested, charged, and photographed in a situation far removed from the heroic roles audiences knew him for. The possibility of serious legal consequences only made the headlines louder. He later pleaded guilty to a reduced assault charge, paid a fine, and avoided jail. But the damage to his image was harder to erase. For years, stories about Crowe's temper had followed him through Hollywood, and now the public had an incident dramatic enough to turn that reputation into something almost legendary. Crowe later apologized, describing the moment as a terrible lapse in judgment, fueled by frustration and jet lag, and a private settlement with Estrada reportedly followed. His career survived, but the phone incident became one of those scandals Hollywood never truly forgets. The irony was almost cinematic. Russell Crowe had spent years playing warriors who survived battlefields and bloodshed. Yet one of the most infamous fights of his real life began because he simply could not get a phone call through. Number 6. Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer was one of Hollywood's most magnetic stars of the 1990s. But on the island of Dr. Moreau, his reputation took a brutal hit. The production was already collapsing when Kilmer arrived, and according to accounts from the set, he clashed repeatedly with the filmmakers while dealing with the emotional strain of a divorce. Original director Richard Stanley was fired early, and replacement John Frankenheimer quickly discovered just how explosive the situation had become. Frankenheimer's frustration eventually became legendary. After filming ended, he publicly declared there were only two things he would never do: climb Mount Everest and work with Val Kilmer again. The tension reportedly became so severe that Kilmer was ordered off the set immediately after finishing his final scene. Even Marlon Brando was said to have clashed with him, delivering a cutting remark about not confusing the size of his paycheck with the size of his talent. Years later, Kilmer admitted the shoot had been chaotic and acknowledged that his divorce had affected his behavior. Still, the damage was done. The Island of Dr. Moreau became infamous not just as a troubled movie, but as one of Hollywood's great production disasters. For Kilmer, it left behind a darker legend, an actor so difficult that one director swore no amount of money could ever make him work with him again. Number 7. Isaiah Washington. Isaiah Washington looked untouchable on Grey's Anatomy. As Dr. Preston Burke, he was part one of television's hottest casts, earning praise and sharing in the show's enormous success. Then, in October 2006, a backstage argument reportedly erupted between Washington and Patrick Dempsey over scheduling and lateness. The confrontation turned physical, with Washington allegedly pinning Dempsey against a wall. But the real explosion came from one word, a homophobic slur that witnesses believed was aimed at co-star T.R. Knight. Suddenly, a private fight had become a national scandal. Washington apologized, but months later, the controversy came roaring back at the Golden Globes. While trying to deny that he had used the slur, he repeated the same offensive term on camera. It was the kind of Hollywood moment nobody could script, an attempted defense that somehow made everything worse. His castmates were visibly uncomfortable. Headlines exploded again, and the scandal became impossible for ABC to ignore. By the end of the season, Washington's contract was not renewed, abruptly ending his run on one of the biggest dramas on television. The fallout followed him long after he left Seattle Grace. Washington later participated in a public service announcement condemning anti-gay language and repeatedly expressed regret over his choice of words, while maintaining that the original dispute with Dempsey began as ordinary workplace tension. But Hollywood rarely forgets a controversy caught in front of cameras. In a matter of months, Washington went from acclaimed television star to a warning about how one heated moment followed by one disastrous attempt to explain it can change an entire career. Number 8. Jared Leto. Jared Leto did not simply play the Joker in Suicide Squad. According to stories from the cast, he tried to make everyone around him feel as if the Joker had actually entered their lives. During production, Leto stayed deeply committed to the character and began sending bizarre gifts to co-stars before they even shared scenes. Margot Robbie reportedly received a live rat. Will Smith was sent a box containing used condoms. Other cast members were said to have received bullet casings, while one especially infamous story involved a dead pig being delivered to the production. Hollywood had seen method acting before, but this felt less like preparation and more like psychological warfare with a makeup trailer. The stories spread everywhere as Suicide Squad approached release, turning Leto's behind-the-scenes behavior into almost as much of a spectacle as the movie itself. Director David Ayer later confirmed that several of the strange gifts were real, while also saying that some of the wilder rumors had been exaggerated by the media. Viola Davis described the experience as bizarre, but said Leto remained professional once filming actually began. Margot Robbie also later downplayed the rat incident, saying she found it more amusing than terrifying. Leto has largely defended the approach as part of building an unpredictable and dangerous version of the Joker. Yet the controversy never completely disappeared. Instead of audiences remembering only the green hair tattoos and manic laugh, many remember the stories of what arrived in boxes behind the scenes. It became one of Hollywood's strangest examples of method acting crossing into real life, leaving everyone to wonder where commitment ends and chaos begins. Number 9. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan once looked destined to own Hollywood. Freaky Friday proved she could carry a studio comedy. Mean Girls turned her into a pop culture obsession, and by her early 20s, she had the fame, money, and momentum most young actors only dream about. Then the cracks began showing on set. During Georgia Rule in 2007, reports described repeated lateness and missed work, pushing producer James G. Robinson to send Lohan a blistering letter accusing her of being discourteous and unprofessional. Suddenly, the former Disney favorite was becoming a production risk. The real danger was bigger than bad headlines. Film insurance companies reportedly became increasingly reluctant to cover productions starring Lohan. A potentially devastating problem in an industry where major films often cannot secure financing without insuring their lead actors. Some projects needed additional guarantees or special contract arrangements just to cast her. It was a brutal reversal. A few years earlier, studios wanted Lindsay Lohan because her name could sell tickets. Now some were worried that the same name could threaten an entire production. Lohan later spoke openly about that chaotic period and the long process of rebuilding trust. Her comeback in the early 2020s finally brought a wave of warmer publicity and new film work. But the scars from those years never completely vanished. Her story remains one of Hollywood's clearest rise and fall warnings. Talent can open every door in town, But once studios stop believing you will actually walk through it on time, even fame cannot keep those doors open forever. Number 10. Katherine Heigl. Katherine Heigl seemed to have everything Hollywood could offer. Grey's Anatomy made her a television star. An Emmy proved she had serious acting credibility, and Knocked Up turned her into a bankable movie name. Then she did something Hollywood rarely forgives. She publicly criticized the very projects making her famous. In a 2007 Vanity Fair interview, Heigl called Knocked Up a little sexist, arguing that its women were portrayed as humorless, while the men got to be lovable and fun. It was an honest opinion, but in Hollywood, honesty can become expensive very quickly. The following year, the controversy grew even louder. Heigl withdrew her name from Emmy consideration for Grey's Anatomy, saying she did not feel she had been given material strong enough to deserve a nomination. To viewers, it sounded bold. To the writers who had spent months creating the show, it reportedly felt like a public slap. Her relationship with the production became increasingly strained, and after leaving Grey's Anatomy in 2010, her once blazing film career began to cool, as reports circulated that studios considered her difficult to work with. Years later, Heigl acknowledged that the way she handled those situations had hurt her career and expressed regret over how she communicated her frustrations. That is what makes her story so fascinating. She was not destroyed by one screaming meltdown or some wild backstage stunt. Instead, a handful of blunt comments slowly reshaped how Hollywood saw her. One moment, she was the industry's new romantic comedy queen. The next, her reputation had become almost as famous as her performances. Number 11. Tommy Lee Jones. Batman Forever was supposed to be loud, colorful, and fun, but behind the scenes, Jim Carrey apparently walked straight into one of the coldest celebrity feuds of his career. Carrey was playing the wildly energetic Riddler opposite Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, and the two could not have been more different. According to Carrey, Jones made his feelings painfully clear during a dinner early in production, telling him he could not sanction his behavior, and making it obvious that Carrey's explosive comedy style was not amusing him at all. For Carrey, the encounter was deeply uncomfortable. He later recalled feeling intimidated by Jones, who already carried the reputation of a serious Oscar-winning dramatic actor, while Carrey was still being treated by some in Hollywood as the rubber-faced comedy guy. That tension reportedly lingered through filming. The irony was almost perfect on screen. Their characters were fighting Batman. Off-screen, the real battle seemed to be between one actor who could not stop performing and another who apparently wished he would. Jones has never offered a detailed public version of the story, and the two men never worked together again after Batman Forever. Carrey, however, has retold the encounter multiple times over the years, turning one brutally awkward dinner into Hollywood legend. No screaming match, no leaked tape, no flying telephone. Just a few icy words from Tommy Lee Jones that were apparently sharp enough to make one of the biggest comedians on earth feel very small. Number 12. Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey did not become a diva by accident. With more than 200 million records sold and decades at the top of pop culture, she built a reputation for luxury that eventually became almost as famous as her voice. Industry reports and former collaborators described elaborate requirements surrounding her appearances, from multiple assistants and private rooms for hair and makeup to carefully controlled temperatures. One especially famous story claimed Carey once asked to be carried up and down a small number of stairs rather than walk them herself. At that point, high maintenance almost felt too ordinary a description. The stories kept growing, and entertainment media happily turned them into diva mythology. dressing rooms, climate control, personal staff, specific comfort. Demands every new rumor seemed more extravagant than the last. Yet unlike stars who desperately fight a difficult reputation, Carey often leaned straight into it. She joked about the image in interviews, played with the public's fascination, and turned the word diva into part of her brand. The joke was simple. If Hollywood already believed she lived like royalty, why not wear the crown? During her time on American Idol, colleagues said she could be demanding, but remained professional once production actually started. Carey herself has often responded to extreme stories with humor rather than serious denial, and that may be why this case feels different from the others. There was no screaming tape, no arrest, no career-ending feud. Just Mariah Carey turning outrageous expectations into entertainment and somehow making being difficult look almost glamorous. Number 13. Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez has spent decades building an empire across music, film, television, and live performance. But behind that polished image came a reputation for extremely specific backstage demands. Industry reports have repeatedly claimed that rooms prepared for Lopez needed an almost obsessive level of control, including white furniture, white flowers, white candles, and even carefully arranged dressing spaces. Some reports also described strict temperature preferences and a large personal entourage following her even for relatively short appearances. For crews already juggling tight schedules, every extra detail meant another thing that had to be perfect. Those stories quickly became part of J.Lo mythology. Portable trailers, award show dressing rooms, hotel suites, virtually any space she entered was rumored to require precise preparation. To critics, it looked like classic celebrity excess. To Lopez, it was apparently something more practical. Over the years, she has occasionally laughed off the stories, without fully confirming the wildest versions, while acknowledging that experience taught her to control her environment whenever possible. After decades under relentless public scrutiny, comfort was not exactly a luxury she was willing to leave to chance. And that is what makes her case different from the explosive scandals surrounding some of Hollywood's most difficult stars. There was no leaked screaming match, no arrest, no career-destroying feud. Instead, Lopez became famous for something quieter, but just as revealing the enormous machinery required to keep a superstar comfortable. In Hollywood, some divas demand attention. Jennifer Lopez allegedly demanded the room itself be redesigned before she even walked through the door. Number 14. Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway was never just another difficult star. She was an Oscar winner, a screen icon, and one of the most respected dramatic actresses of her generation. But behind that prestige followed a reputation for behavior that could turn a production tense very quickly. Years after Mommy Dearest co-star, Rutanya Alda claimed Dunaway had struck her for real during a scene that was only supposed to be a staged slap. The story became one more piece of the reputation Hollywood had whispered about for decades. Then, in 2019, that reputation exploded back into public view. Dunaway was fired from the Broadway-bound production T at 5 after reports of chronic lateness and disruptive behavior toward crew members during previews in Boston. Soon afterward, former assistant Michael Rocha filed a discrimination lawsuit, accusing her of repeatedly making derogatory comments about his sexual orientation. The suit also referenced claims that Dunaway had thrown objects and physically lashed out at people during rehearsals. Dunaway's legal team denied the allegations, while the producers confirmed only that their relationship with her had ended. Still, the controversy revived decades of stories about one of Hollywood's most formidable actresses. The tragedy is almost cinematic, a performer capable of commanding an entire screen eventually became just as famous for what allegedly happened when the cameras were off. In Dunaway's case, the line between legendary intensity and impossible behavior became harder and harder to separate. Number 15. Mike Myers. Mike Myers became one of the defining comedy stars of the 1990s, turning Wayne Campbell and Austin Powers into characters audiences could quote for years. By the early 2000s, that success gave him enormous creative influence, but behind the laughs came a less flattering reputation. During productions, including The Cat in the Hat and later The Love Guru, reports from collaborators described Myers as intensely controlling, frequently rewriting scenes, and pushing hard over creative decisions. The perfectionism that helped build his comedy empire was starting to exhaust the people working around him. The Cat in the Hat became especially notorious. Reports described serious tension between Myers and director Bo Welch, with disagreements over the film's direction and creative control hanging over the production. Welch, already respected for his work as a production designer, never directed another major studio feature afterward. Myers rarely confronted the stories, directly preferring to let his successful career speak for him. But the complaints continued to follow his name long after the movie left theaters. That is what makes Myers an unusual entry on this list. There was no arrest-leaked screaming tape or spectacular public meltdown. Instead, his difficult reputation grew quietly through stories from the people behind the camera. The man who made millions laugh was allegedly much less funny when every detail had to go exactly his way. In Hollywood, sometimes the biggest nightmare on set is not the star who explodes. It is the one who simply refuses to let anything move forward until it is perfect.